Hi there, students. I'm XS. That's little x, little s, which stands for extra sweet, because that's what I am. I'm a Puppy-sensei, and I make Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. It's been a couple weeks since my last grammar drop. You haven't forgotten about your Puppy-sensei, have you? In my last grammar drop, I taught you niyorito, which I defined as according to. I told you that it's a pretty simple segment that you can place between a speaker or another source and what it is that they might be claiming to basically attribute that claim to that source, just like in this sentence. 先生によると今週の内容もわかりやすいです. And that's true. According to me, this week's content is also pretty easy to understand. This week, we're going to learn a very similar grammatical pattern, niyotte. Niyotte looks a lot like niyoruto, right? And fortunately, niyotte ends up getting used in a way that's very similar to niyoruto. And that makes our task today a lot easier because it won't be too hard for you to deploy niyotte in your Japanese sentences if you already know how to use niyoruto. Okay? Unfortunately, the meaning of niyoruto and niyotte is actually quite a bit different, and that makes it just the tiniest bit difficult to understand. So I wanted to do a lesson on each one and then contrast them for you so you can understand the nuance between them. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. So first, let's understand exactly what I mean when I say niyoruto and niyotte are pretty much going to be used in the same way. Here's a sentence that uses niyoruto. We previously defined niyoruto as meaning according to, and that's great because here this sentence makes perfect sense to us. Tenki yoho niyoruto, according to the weather report, kyou ame ga furimasu. It's gonna rain today. This all tracks perfectly. Great sentence. Now, we're gonna swap niyoruto for niyotte. So here's our new sentence. Tenki yoho niyotte kyou ame ga furimasu. Alright, students, let's take a minute to talk. I want to take just a moment to explain something about linguistics to you. In the field of linguistics, there are entire studies on cases where sentences can be grammatically sound, where nothing is wrong with the sentence at the grammatical level, but the sentence is semantically nonsensical. Makes no sense whatsoever. There's nothing wrong with the grammar. It looks like a perfect sentence, but it just makes absolutely no sense. Let me show you an example in English, okay? Alright, so I'm showing you two sentences here to help provide you with examples of two different interplays between the idea of syntax, what's working at the level of the sentence, and semantics, what's working at the level of meaning. So, our first sentence is, a panda eats shoots and leaves. That's a perfectly okay sentence. It means that a panda is a creature that likes to eat shoots of bamboo, I should think, yummy, and tree leaves. There he is. He's eating those shoots and leaves. The second sentence, however, well, okay, the use of commas is actually giving us a strongly different impression of what this panda is up to, right? A panda eats, shoots, and leaves. The second sentence is fine syntactically. It's a perfectly valid sentence and there's nothing wrong with the grammar at the level of the sentence. But semantically, at the level of the meaning, it's really weird, right? It implies that the panda did three verbs: eat some food, shoot a gun, and then tumble down the hill like a goofball to get out of there. Now sure, that could make sense with the appropriate context, couldn't it? If you gave a panda a gun and somehow the panda managed to fire the gun, then yeah, okay. This is an alright sentence at the semantic level, right? No problem. But also, like, no, probably not. I don't think that happened. So now let's transition back to our niyoruto versus niyotte sentences. 天気予報によると今日雨が降ります and 天気予報によって今日雨が降ります So, with the case of niyorito, we can pretty easily translate our sentence as according to, and that gives us a definition that's like, according to the weather report, it's gonna rain today. Awesome. And as I've already told you, our second sentence, tenki yoho ni yotte kyou ame ga furimasu, is syntactically and grammatically sound. It's a perfect sentence at the level of the sentence. There's nothing wrong with the grammar, so no problem, right? The problem here is that unlike niyorito, which we have translated as according to, niyotte should best be translated in this sentence as due to or because of. And that's going to cause a problem for us because tenki yoho ni yotte kyou ame ga furimasu ends up meaning it's because of the weather report that it's going to rain today. And that doesn't work unless you're like weather reporter guy is also a magician or a Jedi. Niyotte works the same way as niyorito. It slides between two things. But the problem is that in the case of niyotte, it's sliding between the cause of an event and the event itself. We see niyotte used in this way, right? It's due to some cause, some action occurs. You can see that niyorito and niyotte convey different meanings, and those meanings are highly dependent on the context of the sentence in question, right? Now, it's also the case that there are certainly situations where both niyorito and niyotte can be used in very similar sentence structures, and they kind of convey a contextually similar meaning in some cases, right? So here's an example. Manager-sama ni yoru to byoki ni narimashita. This sentence explains that perhaps Manager-sama told someone that I got sick, and so niyorito is conveying the sense of according to Manager-sama, here's this claim, Puppy-sensei got sick. But in our second sentence, Manager-sama ni yotte byoki ni narimashita. It's the blame that's being placed on Manager-sama for the action. It is because of Manager-sama that Puppy-sensei got sick. Maybe she was coughing around me and I became ill or something like that, right? So very directly and as concretely as possible. Niyorito is different from niyotte because niyotte implies a cause, while niyorito is simply conveying the information regarding some event from some point of view or some certain source. And that's pretty much it. So, are we done here? Well, no. See, niyotte can actually be pretty versatile, especially when compared with niyorito. And while due to or because of are pretty nice definitions for niyotte in a lot of cases, unfortunately there are also a bunch of other situations where that is far, far, far not concrete enough. This niyotte can be very, very slippery, so we can't always rely on a definition of due to or because of for niyotte in the same way that we can definitely rely on a definition of according to for niyorito. Okay, let's look at this example so that I can kind of illustrate this point a little bit more. This example is 学生によって勉強する方が違う. What's the implication here? The sentence makes good sense. Different students, different study habits. But what actually is niyotte doing in this sentence? And that's, as I said, a little bit slippery. I think the best way to translate niyotte here is actually based on. As in, there are different study styles based on the student. Different students have different study habits. The study habits will be different based on the student. There's no cause and effect here. It would be absolutely incorrect to translate this sentence as due to the students, the study styles are different. That doesn't make any sense. That's objectively missing the point of the sentence. And I'll point out, this use of niyotte to mean based on who is doing the action is based. I mean common. Here's another example. 人によって意見が異なる. In case you're wondering, 異なる also means is different, just like the verb 違う. The difference between these two verbs is basically that 違う means something like these two things are different, while 異なる means something more like these two things are distinct from one another. Very similar meaning in my mind, but 異なる kind of sounds a little bit more elevated and scholarly in my humble opinion. Anyway, this structure is always going to show up in the following pattern. You're going to have some kind of group, right? And within that group, niyotte, there's some kind of noun that is different. So that noun ga chigao, or that noun ga kotonaru in some way. There is some noun which is different for this particular group. Okay? Now, this is a really common pattern that you hear in Japanese very often. You're basically saying that something is different based on the individual or based on members of a particular group. For example, VTuber によって好むゲームが違う. It makes sense, right? And the important thing to remember is that when you have this structure, this 何々々によって何々々が違う or が異なる structure, then in those cases the niyotte never means due to or because of, because there's no cause happening here. When used in this context, niyotte means something more like based on the individual or depending on the person. So basically we kind of have three different uses that we're talking about here. We have source, niyoruto, claim, which we're going to define as according to. This is true according to this source. Then we would have cause, niyotte, event. This happened because of this cause. And then finally we would have group, niyotte, some noun, ga chigao. Each of this thing is different based on this member of whatever group, right? If your sentence pattern includes a speaker relaying a claim, then niyoruto would mean according to that speaker. If your sentence pattern includes an event being caused by something or someone, then niyotte would mean due to or because of that cause. And if you have a sentence pattern where you have a group or a member of a larger group, followed by some noun or opinion or event, ga chigao or ga kotonaru, then the best way to translate that in niyotte pattern, in this case, would be something like depending on the individual. I hope you're not too confused by all of this. I think we can probably close the book on Niyoruto and Niyotte for now. Next week, I'll be talking about things that are difficult to do or easy to do using a new grammar pattern that we actually saw today, but I'll do a much more in-depth dive next week. I'm looking forward to it. Until then, see you soon! Mata ne!